With this tool, you can fine-tune your engine's power, idle, emissions, and fuel economy. I'm going to demonstrate on this Honda how to connect to it, how to read your timing marks, and make the necessary adjustments. Make sure you stick around to the end, where I'm going to explain what ignition timing is exactly and how a timing light works. Thanks for hanging out today with the Ortotech Garage. My name's Keith. Let's dive right in. All right, guys, before we get started setting the ignition timing, there are a few things we need to do in preparation for this process. First step is we need to know what the instructions are. How do we put this thing in base timing mode? What are the timing specs on it? Normally, all that stuff will be found under the hood here on an emissions decal. Unfortunately, this Honda Civic is 20-something years old. It's missing the decal on it. But I've pulled up the information for you in the repair manual. I'll pop it up on the screen so you can see it. Ignition timing should be set to 16 degrees before top dead center. That's step one. Step two, we need to put this in base timing mode. There'll be a blue connector underneath the passenger side of the dashboard. There's a brown and a green wire that need to be jumped. I have a jumper wire set up for that, but you can also use a paper clip. That'll work just fine if you don't have a little jumper wire set up like I do. Third step we need to check our timing marks. Sometimes these cars, especially when they get old like this, you're not going to be able to see the timing marks on there. You might need to take a crayon and color in the slot, put a dab of paint or something like that. So we need to visually inspect the crankshaft to see if the timing marks are visible, because if we can't see them, there's no point in trying to put a timing light on it. So I'll pop this up on the screen here and show you what these timing marks look like before we get started. You'll see there's a red mark. The red mark is going to indicate the ignition timing. That's 16 degrees before top dead center. There are a couple of white lines on the outside of the red line that gives you a variation, a little range there. They say plus or minus 2 degrees. The other line you're going to see on there, which is a small distance away, is going to be an individual white line. That white line is top dead center for cylinder number 1. So top dead center is when the piston comes all the way up and is about to reverse now to go back the opposite direction. That is 0 degrees. So there's two ways we can use this timing light. The first thing I can do is just set it up to 0 degrees, flash, and line up that red mark. If I didn't have that, I can use the 0 mark and adjust the timing degrees on here and see how many degrees we've got for timing. So there's two ways we were able to do that. We're just going to do the conventional way. I'm going to assume that you don't have a timing light that's adjustable like I do. If you're having trouble finding your timing marks, the best thing you can do is to get in there with some sort of a ratchet socket and just turn the crankshaft manually. On this Honda, there's an access window in here. There's a small hole with some little flaps on it. We just poke the flaps through, and I can stick this long extension in here with a 17mm socket right on the crankshaft bolt. And then we can just turn this crankshaft around while we watch. So if I were to stick this in here through the hole and put on the socket, and then we can just go ahead, get it on the crankshaft bolt. And then rotate this engine around slowly so we can see the timing marks. You might need to get a light in here, but this will help you find those timing marks. If for some reason you need to put a dab of paint on it, you may want to take those timing marks, put them upside down, and then go from underneath. Maybe take the lower cover off so you can put a dab of paint on there more easily. It's hard sometimes to get in from the top because the belt's in the way, you've got engine mounts in the way. So however you have to do it. Fortunately, this car has got great timing marks on it, even as old as it is, so we can go ahead and proceed. Now that we've located our timing marks, the next thing I want to do is loosen up 2 of the 3 bolts on this distributor. There's one on top and then 2 off to the sides. The reason I don't want to loosen all 3 of them is because I want to be able to check and see where the ignition timing sits now before I make adjustments. If I loosen all 3 bolts now, it's possible the distributor will move before we can get a chance to get a baseline on it. So let's just go ahead and get these 2 bolts on the bottom loosened up a little bit. Leave the top one tight. We're not going to take these all the way out, just loosen the turner, so it should be enough. Okay, and then we'll come back in here, this top bolt, and we'll loosen that up when we're ready to actually make an adjustment on it. All right, next thing, make sure you get your timing light out. You want to connect to number 1 cylinder with this clamp. Number 1 cylinder is always going to be the cylinder closest to the front of the engine. We've got the timing components over here, timing belt. Front of the engine is on this side, and you want to make sure you connect to number 1 cylinder. Now, if you're operating with a V8 or a V6, sometimes it's hard to tell when you have a left bank and a right bank which one is closer to the front. They're always offset just a tiny bit. Sometimes you can see it in the valve cover where one valve cover is pushed forward just to maybe a half an inch in front of the other one. If you can't identify that way, you can always pull up a cylinder identification chart. I'll pop one up and show you what that looks like. That'll be your go-to if you can't identify which cylinder is closest to the front of the engine. That should be number one. I'll go ahead and connect your leads on your timing light, red to positive, black to negative. Once your timing light's lit up, powered up, we're going to go ahead, fire the car up. Make sure your parking brake is set. Make sure your vehicle's in neutral, and we'll go ahead and start the car up. Probably should mention as well, make sure your timing light's in a safe area. When you start the car, it doesn't get tangled up in the belt somewhere. Over here on the passenger side of this Honda, there's going to be this blue connector. You might have to dig up behind the glove box a little bit. Sometimes they're located behind this kick panel here on the right footwell. But you want to find this blue connector. It's got this brown wire and green wire with the white tracer on it. This is where we're going to connect our jumper leads. So I've just got some standard banana jacks here with a couple of back probes. Like I told you before, you can go ahead and use a paper clip. It works just fine. All we're just trying to do is jump these two connectors together. And we're going to put this in base timing mode so the computer is not going to try to adjust the timing at all on its own. I've got my timing light out. We're set to 0 degrees on here. This way we're not advancing through the timing light at all. And then we're just going to go ahead and get this light down here and check our marks. So we're lining up the V notch to the arrow on the gray timing cover. And then we're going to line both of those up to the red mark, which is our 16 degrees before top dead center. Now I can see here we're off just a couple of degrees. Now we're going to loosen that last bolt on the distributor. I'm going to move this back and forth because I want to show you what it looks like, how the timing marks move as we turn the distributor. And then we'll go ahead and set the timing, lock the distributor back up. All right, now that we've got our computer in base timing mode by jumping out that 2-pin connector in the passenger side footwell, let's go ahead and get a reading at the timing marks of where we sit before we start any adjustments. So it looks like our timing mark is off just a little bit. It might be a few degrees. I want to go ahead and loosen this last bolt on the distributor. This way we can turn the distributor. And you'll notice, don't grab the top of the distributor over here where the ignition wires are. If you've got some leaky ignition wires, you're going to get quite a shock, literally. I'll grab it down here a little by the base. It's probably a little warm down here, so just be careful with that too. But you'll notice if I turn it this way, the engine starts to stumble. If I turn it this way, the idle speed comes up a bit. So this is my full range that I'm able to adjust the timing on here. Now, if I look down at my timing marks, you can see it's giving me probably a full 16 to 20 degrees of range with the timing. Okay, so it goes all the way down to the white mark, lining up with the pointer, and then all the way past the red mark, lining up to the pointer. But what we're looking to do is set the timing at 16 degrees, which I told you earlier is at the red mark. So let's go ahead and line up those two pointers to the red mark. That looks good there. And then we're going to snug this one bolt up. Once you tighten it, just double check your mark one more time. Everything looks good. We're right at 16 degrees. Now we're ready to lock up the rest of the distributor. We can turn the car off and remove the jumper connector before we do that. Our timing's set. So I'll go ahead and just make sure that's snug. Come in here with my ratchet. And we'll tighten up these other two bolts. Now in the event you can't get your timing marks to line up for some reason, there's not enough range, it's possible your distributor is installed incorrectly. On a Honda like this, it's hard to do that. It's just got a flat blade in it that's offset on one side. But if you're driving an older Chevy product or something that has a spiral gear on it, your distributor may not be timed properly. You may have sunk it down into that to mesh on that gear on the back of the camshaft, and it's in the wrong tooth. So you might have to pull the distributor, turn it a gear, and drop it back down if you can't get your timing marks to line up. Just a little tip for you. Make sure you disconnect all your components here. Restore your fender liner if you happen to remove it for any reason. Make sure you remove the jumper from your blue connector inside the passenger side footwell, and then tuck that blue connector back up where it belongs. As promised, guys, I want to explain to you a little bit about what ignition timing is and how a timing light works. I think everybody kind of understands the general gist of what we just did there, but the question is why? Why are we doing that? So when we talk about top dead center on an engine, we're basically just talking about when that piston reaches the maximum up on its stroke, okay? And it's just ready to turn back down again, or it is turning back down. It's the moment between up and down where the piston's at a standstill. Top dead center on number 1 means that number 1 cylinder is up, and that's how we're timing our ignition here, using number 1 cylinder. But what we want to do sometimes is we want to advance the timing. And what advancing the timing really means is that we're advancing the point at which we ignite that spark plug, and we're doing it before the piston makes it all the way to the top. Okay, so we want to give some time for that spark to ignite the mixture inside the cylinder and give that flame front of that combustion mixture, the combusted mixture, I want to give it some time to move across the cylinder so that it actually meets that piston here as it's ready to come back down. Okay, and that's really what we're trying to adjust. When I say the ignition is before top dead center 16 degrees, that just means before the piston has made it all the way to the top, we've already started igniting that spark plug on that cylinder. And this, of course, happens for all 4 cylinders on this car, but we can only make the adjustment on cylinder number 1. It'll carry through to the rest of them. If we retard the timing, which means the timing is going to happen closer to 0 or maybe even after top dead center, that is not optimal. We don't want to do that. It kills performance, it kills your emissions, kills fuel economy, does all kinds of things. The engineers have designed this vehicle to have 16 degrees before top dead center as the optimal time to start the ignition of that spark plug and start that flame front burning. So this is all we're trying to do, is just that. Now, if you have a performance car or something, you might want to fool around with this number. You got to remember, the manufacturer is worried about a few things. They're worried about performance, they're worried about emissions, they're worried about fuel economy. If you're driving a performance car, you're probably not worried about emissions or fuel economy, so you might be able to tweak these numbers and get a little bit more performance out of your car. I also wanted to note something on here. When we were adjusting this ignition timing, you could see how retarding the timing really dropped the idle speed down. It's really important, if you guys are checking ignition timing, that you're setting the idle speed as well. We want to make sure the car is idling at the proper RPM, and the ignition timing is where it belongs as well. This is pretty much why we're adjusting the ignition timing. We're trying to find that balance between those 3 things the manufacturer is looking at: performance, fuel economy, and emissions. The timing light specifically is just designed to connect to the number 1 spark plug through inductance. It's finding that current that's flowing through the number 1 spark plug wire, and it's going to flash the light at that moment. This is the way it's picking up exactly when that spark plug is firing. That light is designed to flash at that speed. It's going to come up every time that number 1 cylinder spark plug wire has current flowing through. It's going to flash that light. So then just keep in mind, that's going to happen every 2 revolutions. We have 4 strokes in a 4-stroke engine: intake, compression, power, and exhaust. And that spark plug firing is going to happen between the compression and power strokes around top dead center. So we've got to have that crankshaft rotate 2 times before we fire the same spark plug again. Just keep that in mind. That thing is going about half, that timing light's going about half the speed of your actual engine RPM. There are some other features to a nice timing light. You see me using a snap-on tool here. This is something I've had for decades. There's lots of cool tools out there you can use for your car. I like one with an advance on it. It allows me to know exactly how many degrees off I am. I can just adjust the timing mark. Some of them have a little dial on it. I'm sure all the modern ones are push button now, electronic, but it just allows you to make some adjustments to when that timing light flashes a degree at a time. So if I want to see if I've got 3 degrees off, I can just set that thing down a few clicks and I'll know exactly where I'm at. Another thing that'll happen, this Honda has a couple of marks on it. This has a top dead center mark, and it also has an ignition timing mark at 16 degrees. You're not going to see that on necessarily every car. Some cars may only show you 0. Some will show you the entire window. They'll go from maybe 0 to 20 with some graduated marks on the crankshaft. But a lot of times on an older car especially, those are really hard to see. You might only put a paint mark at 0, and then maybe use your advanced timing light with the advanced feature on it in order just to set it to 0, and then set your timing light to 16 degrees or 10 degrees or wherever you might want to set that. So it's just a nice feature to have on your timing light, especially if you're working on multiple cars. You never know what you're up against out here in the real world. In the field, we see all kinds of stuff. All right, well, there you have it. I don't want to bore you to death. I appreciate you guys watching, following along with this video. I hope you learned a little bit something about ignition timing, what it means and all those things, and you're comfortable out there at least setting the timing on your Honda. There's lots of other methods out there. Make sure you're following instructions in the repair manual, because the procedure is really critical. If you miss a step, you could be just setting your timing wrong, by several degrees at least or more. So make sure you're following all those steps. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps our channel grow. We appreciate you guys. following along in this video, and go ahead and check out this next one we got for you. We got lots more timing and diagnostic content coming for you. So if this is up your alley, you want to keep a view on our channel.